Hands are up, hands are up my nose.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
And so next week, I may look like he who must not be named. But it wasn't too long ago, I saw a snake in my yard.
Mm.
I guess I'll put this up here in case I want to look at it. So saw a snake in my yard. I don't see very many of them, so I'm excited about that because they eat things that I don't want there, and I don't care if the snakes are good. Saw, fine. It saw me and it went immobile. Then I went immobile. And you know, I meditate twice a day, but the stillness of the snake is much greater than that of a human. It doesn't even breathe. I don't know how they do it. So I watched the snake and it watched me, and the snake became my teacher. Now, there's a quote. All men travel from self to God by way of prayer. That's by Francis W. Stokes from the Unity School of Christianity, 1945. So all these years, we're still teaching the same basic, simple truths about prayer. I got to tell you a story. There's a young man, he's sitting quietly in the woods. His head is bowed, his eyes are closed. There's a smile on his face. You ever smile when you meditate? It really helps. His shoulder is rising up and down gently as he's breathing deeply from his belly. There's no time in his world because he's in the moment. It's a miracle what a simple thing like breath awareness does for our nerves. You know, breathing takes place in the moment, they say. And so let's imagine, would it do you any good, really, as far as breathing goes, if you just thought of a breath you had yesterday? No oxygen comes from a thought of a breath, right? So breathing is an oxygen coming into your body is a now and present moment thing. So the young man, after a few breaths, he is totally relaxed. He begins to unwind. This is the first stage of unity prayer. So the young man could stop here, and this could be the whole prayer. Many do. This is stage one, and it's the initial attempt to quiet the mind. He begins to chant softly, his eyes still closed. Singing counts as breath awareness. Just try singing and not paying attention to how you're breathing. Well, okay, I've had choirs that they don't. But it's hard. But breathing, breath awareness, singing also counts as the second stage of unity prayer, which the Unity and the Buddhists both call concentration. But the boy, he doesn't know this. He just feels like chanting in the moment is the right thing to do. Stage two is the second attempt to quiet our mind. Jesus' greatest challenge was in the Garden of Gethsemane, where the scriptures tell us that his agony was of such magnitude that he bled from every pore. Can you imagine that? How did he prepare for this? He sang a hymn. St. Mark tells us, and when they had sung a hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives. When King Saul was over the top, angry, and threatening to become violent, David ran and got his harp and played the harp for the king until his anger was abated and peace was restored. The next time you're angry at someone, try chanting the name of God and see what happens. Emmett Fox, we quote him a lot. You know, he wasn't even a Unity minister, but he was a New Thought minister, and he was a good one. He was in New York, and he had a congregation of 5,000, which is large for a Unity church. And this is what he said. Here is the golden key to solving all of your problems. Like all fundamental truths, it is simplicity itself. You know, these ministers from that time period, they have to build it up, and they finally get to the end. You go, oh, is that all you had to say? Anyway, but he really had something important to say. It says, all you have to do is this. This is the key, the golden key. Whatever, stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and start thinking of God. That's all you have to do. That's the whole plan. That's the whole mechanism. If you have a difficulty, if you're having a problem, if you're having mental, emotional distress, stop what you're doing and think of God, and the problem will go away. This sounds an awful lot like chanting the name of God, doesn't it? This stage can also be fulfilled by concentrating on divine ideas. That's Charles Fillmore's term for a set of ideas. Peace, gratitude, abundance, wisdom, ideas like this. Focus on these. This counts as the stage of concentration in unity prayer. And so the practice of denials and affirmations fit here in this stage. But concentration is only a stage we pass through on our way to our inner sanctum sanctorum, where silence reigns supreme. You can use affirmations to guide your mortal life. But when it comes to contact with divine mind, your only option is to surrender. Go into the silence and wait upon the Lord. Stage 3. Silence is stage 3 of unity prayer and our final attempt to quiet the mind. The young man's chanting becomes softer and quieter as he becomes centered in the heart, his divine identity, and in deep, restful silence. Here, in a non-time, non-space reality, his personal sense of self recedes. This reality is indescribable. Some call this reality the kingdom of heaven, others call it Father. There are many names for it. All suggest it is not a person or a place, but a state of being. George Fox. Anyone know who George Fox is? Raise your hand if you know.
Well,
What?
not personally.
Well, I hope not. He's been dead a long time. I don't mean anyone that he doesn't run a radio station or a TV show or anything.
But yeah, I know.
Okay, he's
And Johanna really liked him.
Oh, did he? Well, she would, because he said a lot of things that resonated with what unity teaches. Even though he was actually the founder of the picture
Oh,
movement.
I'm thinking Emmett Fox, sorry. You said George Fox.
George Fox, Emmett Fox.
But
But she also liked George. We've talked about George.
And I know about George. Yeah.
So he was a rascal and he was bold as brass. He refused to take his hat off in the presence of the King of England. But you do that, they killed people for that sort of thing back then. And he insisted on using the king's language when talking to a slave by saying thee and thou. That was an insult to the king. You don't talk to them that way. You say you and yours. Now we talk to everyone as if they're slaves. It's the economy. So in the end, though, he got into a lot of trouble for this, but in the end, it gained him respect. He had this to say about silent prayer, which was actually one of the main central tenets of their religion, of the Quaker movement. All of you who are in your own wisdom and in your own reason, you say that silent waiting upon God is a famine to you, that it is a strange life to you to come to be silent. You must come into a new world. Now you must die in the silence, die from the wisdom, die from the knowledge, die from reason, die from the understanding. For a moment, put yourself in this young man's place. You are sitting on the edge of silence, waiting upon the Lord. So far, you've been working on quieting your mind using breath awareness and affirmations, chanting. Now you continue the work in silence. It is time to let go of your previous efforts and surrender. You have used your imagination and with it have built a bridge halfway to this other reality, which is divine presence. Now I'm asking you to let go of the outcome. You are standing on your part of the bridge, swaying at the unfinished end of it. The remaining part of the bridge is empty, is missing. Your foot is reaching out into empty space. Simply blank out your mind and step forward. Then allow God to provide the rest of the bridge into divine presence. He will if you insist. Just stay blank and refuse to use your imagination to create this journey into divine mind. George Fox describes this journey. In time, this silence brings you to feel the power of an endless life, and you come to possess it. In silence, waiting upon God, you come to receive the wisdom from above by which all things were made and created. It gives us an understanding and reason that is clearly different from that of the earthly man. This fourth stage of prayer is knowledge of the Lord. Stage 4 is the result of doing stages 1, 2, and 3. Some call this fourth stage realization, which occurs when truth becomes real to you, no longer theoretical. You get it. Whereas before you just believed it, now you know it. God is channeled through many forms. Whether or not you see God or talk to him, her, is irrelevant. Let me repeat that. It is irrelevant, of null effect, null importance. Your language does not matter. What matters is the knowledge of the Lord. Does it really matter what you said if you have contact, if you feel the divine presence? That's really all you're after. I often say, I'm going to throw this in. Don't think we need to be poets to talk to God. I know, we try, because we want it to sound cool. But seriously, when I'm praying in private, sometimes all I say is Father, and I wait and I listen. All I really want to do is catch his attention, and I want some information. I don't want to talk. I just want information. So I just say Father and I listen and get the things I want to hear. Now, you each receive that voice, the voice of God, in your own vocabulary, in your own experience. God speaks to each one of us individually. This contact is so uniquely yours that not another person in this world can tell you what it will be like. Some have mystical experiences. Others feel a warm and comfortable feeling while sitting beside a creek wandering out of the mountains. Others are filled with love and gratitude while giving service. Some bear a child. There is no hierarchy or grade of good or better where contact with divine mind is concerned. Some say unity with God produces a feeling of completeness, a total lack of fear, a silence which is under everything, filling everything. Others are filled with bliss. Others are comforted with the perfect solution to a problem they are facing. It's all good. And I repeat, this contact is so uniquely yours that there is not another person on this planet that can tell you what it will be like. The young man senses the time is right, and he simply says, Father. Oh, well, I got ahead of myself. Because that's what I do when I need something. Oh, and when I don't need something. Sometimes I just say thank you. The Jews only say thank you. But Father, and he waits. He has been doing this for weeks now, going into the woods, preparing his mind in meditation, then saying this one word and waiting for a divine answer. He had a plan. He decided that if he was going to get an answer from God, he needed to have a question to ask. And so he came up with a question, which was, what is my life's mission? Did he get an answer? Eventually. I suspect there are two reasons he succeeded. He developed the faith and will. The faith part was that he knew that his Heavenly Father loved him and that he was going to talk to him. The will part was to get up and go, which it took to drive into the mountains on a regular basis to prepare himself and then to sit in prayer for 2 hours at a time, pleading with his Father to answer his prayer. Now, I want to reemphasize that in this way. This is not a casual event. The young man didn't just sit there and meditated prayer. He sat there in intense anticipation that in the very next moment, he was going to hear the voice of God answering his prayer. He wasn't just wishing, he knew it. And he waited. It didn't happen. What's going to happen now? Nope, not yet. What's going to happen now? You know, for 2 hours at a time. Now, one day, about 2 hours after praying this one-sided prayer, you know how it happened? The young man felt a wonderfully joyous feeling fill him, and he heard one single word in his head, which was his answer to prayer. The one word which would define his life's mission from that moment onward. The word was service. He jumped, he trembled, he began crying. It had happened. It was real after all. He knew that it wasn't his mind doing the talking. The sensation was of a real person speaking to him, not his own thoughts. Over the next few weeks, this voice grew stronger until it was easy to talk to, especially after quieting his mind for a while. Now, for those wishing to follow in this young man's footsteps, to follow the steps of prayer that Unity preaches, I have some advice. First, this fourth step of prayer is entering into God consciousness. Therefore, the language of prayer is irrelevant. I said this, I gotta say it again, it's really important. What matters is the person you become. Oh, this is the catch. Unity prayer isn't just about contact with God. It creates just change in us. We cannot pray without becoming a different person. Emmett Fox said. And that is because it turns out that you cannot be occupied by perfection without becoming as that perfection is. This is grace, union with God. For the mind of God to be consciously united with your mortal mind is the grace that heals broken heart and lifts up that within which is lame and cannot walk. To pray without ceasing, that is, to look continually towards God and his sinless heaven, is to enter into this mind also, which sees no error, therefore takes no offense and has nothing to forgive. By the way, I have it in here in the middle of my talk, but that's actually what's out of the same prayer book that I quoted from the beginning from Mr. Falk's Effectual Prayer, a Unity book published in 1945. So let me read that last sentence again. To look continually towards God and his sinless heaven is to enter into this mind, which also sees no error, therefore takes no offense and has nothing to forgive. Forgiveness is an act that takes place after we have experienced and reacted against an event which we couldn't forgive at the time. If you forgive in the moment, the difficulty happens. This is not really forgiveness. It's more of a mindset, a God mindset. My second piece of advice is to beware that you don't desire the gifts more than you desire the giver. If you seek the treasures of the earth, you will receive the treasures of the earth. If you seek the treasures of heaven, that is what you receive. The best kind of prayer is not seeking solutions to your problems, but to seek God. Now, the question, can we do both? Ask for solutions to our difficulties and become close to God? Yes, we can. Approach God only with legitimate desires. Then pray for their fulfillment. Not as a beggar, but as a son or daughter. I am thy child, thou art my father, or thou and I are one. In this way, you will awaken your awareness of God as well as declaring your desires. The gifts and the giver become one. Put another way, as you pray, meditate upon the complete unity of yourself and all that you see. Do this not once, not simply in present circumstances, but at all times, especially in difficult circumstances. For insomuch as you love and feel at one with those things that you're having difficulty with, to that extent, these circumstances will be alleviated. They've served their purpose, and you can move on. This edict is echoed in our habit of declaring, I see the Christ in you. The young man reminds me of me when I was 17. Undoubtedly, the most important metaphysical event that happened in my life was also the first. I was 17 when I opened a communication line with God. Like this young man, I too heard just one word for my first answer to prayer. And like this young man, the word was service. I find it encouraging that my first word from God remained consistent in all my experiences with him. That first answer to prayer has been like a thread running through my life. Each piece of divine communication has been nothing more than an extension of this first message. Perhaps God gave the answer to all my prayers at once, that first day. And I am slowly opening up my awareness to become more and more capable of feeling and understanding that answer. Perhaps there has only been one answer to prayer for all of humanity. As we open up more and more, we begin to feel this one divine message. What would the grand summary of this divine message be? We are one with the divine. Is that the grand summary? All suggest that it would be that we were never, ever separate in the first place. Our feelings of separation are only an illusion. You and I are just one being, held together in unity by an incomprehensible presence. And for this, I am deeply grateful, thankful, which takes us to the fifth and final stage of unity prayer, gratitude. That is what I have to say today. And I'll just mention here before our meditation that I'd like to gather afterwards for those who wish to talk about unity prayer after the meeting. And actually, more interesting to me would be to hear your own experiences with prayer, because I know they're all different and they're all valuable and interesting to me. How do other people communicate with God? I think I've listed quite a few here. Maybe some of those fit. Anyway, for our meditation, I'd like to play the flute again. I like playing the flute. I hope you like hearing it. But let the flute take you into the deep place in your mind where you wait upon the Lord.
Mhm.